Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Naomi Hausman. I am the Director of Institutional Advancement at Gratz College, and I'm thrilled to be here tonight. Thank you all for joining us. This is the fourth in a series of 5 webinars that began this past Sunday as a countdown to our commencement on Sunday. The Student and Alumni Speaker Series is something we're trying out this year as a way to introduce our community to some of the many wonderful grad students and alumni who are doing innovative work in the world and are passionate about what they do, and want to share how Gratz has helped them on their journey. So let me actually, yeah, there we go. Okay, I want to make sure my slides are in the right place here. This series of speakers is also part of a campaign to support scholarship fund at Gratz. So we're calling this the Gratz Giving Countdown to Commencement. What we are trying to do is encourage folks to support, I guess, honor and celebrate our graduates, but also make a donation to support our students who have financial need. So the way we're doing that in this countdown to commencement is to ask our alumni, friends of Gratz, students, family of students, to make a small donation of about $20.20 to be precise, for a virtual seat at our commencement. The commencement itself is online. Paul will talk about that in a moment, but it's free and online to all. We encourage you to attend. But the virtual seat is just a way to sort of make your voice heard in terms of supporting our students this year. We have an online, on our website, a virtual auditorium, and when you donate, you can submit your photo and also anybody you want to honor with your gift, and that will all appear on our website, and we'll thank all of our donors this Sunday. So tonight we are here to listen to a very special presenter, Elizabeth Christy. She is an alumnus of Gratz, recently, only a year ago, from our Master of Science in Nonprofit Management. And she'll be sharing her experience with farming in an urban environment. And I'm really excited to hear what she has to say and share with us. Just a quick note about the presentation. As you probably have guessed, you're going to have your video and audio off so that we can focus on our presenters. But we do encourage you to use the chat function in Zoom at any point over the next 30 minutes, and we'll take some time for questions towards the end. So feel free to go ahead and put your questions in the chat. And then I just want to take a moment now to introduce the president of Gratz College, Dr. Paul Finkelman, who would like to welcome everybody and say a few words about our nonprofit management program. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you very much, Naomi, and I'm welcome to all of you who are sitting in your homes or your living rooms or camping out somewhere in this virtual world that we now live in. I'm delighted that you are all joining us. This is a special year for Gratz College. It is our 125th anniversary. We began in 1895. It is also our 125th commencement, because of course it took a few years to actually have a commencement after we opened up the college. Our commencement will take place this Sunday, as Naomi has noted, and I do hope that all of you will buy a seat. It's $20.20. I suppose you could move the decimal point if you wanted a little bit further to the right and give more. We would love to get that. But the idea is to have your pictures in the auditorium, your names in the auditorium, and to be part of our virtual commencement. We will be hearing from Dr. Stephen Pilch, who teaches at the University of Pennsylvania's Graduate School of Education. He is getting an honorary doctorate, and this makes sense because this is the first year that we are giving people doctorate degrees in our new EDD in educational leadership. So this is the first class of people to get our new doctorate in education. Tonight's seminar focuses on one of our recent graduates in the nonprofit management program, Liz Christy, who and among other things, happens to be the daughter of my administrative assistant Dodi Klimoff. So I am familiar with Liz on a variety of levels. I met Liz last year when I was out meeting alumni in Los Angeles, where she does what is possibly the most un-Los Angeles thing possible, which is to farm in Los Angeles. And that in itself uh, is illustrative, I think, of how unique and how interesting Gratz is, that our graduates do things that no one would expect anybody to do. The nonprofit management program is a very important component of Gratz, and it is supported in part by various Jewish organizations which give mid-career fellowships for students who are employed by American Jewish organizations in the United States. The mid-career fellows receive a 25% scholarship and are eligible for additional scholarships as well. Now, the fact that we have the mid-career scholarships special for people who are working in Jewish organizations, we have other scholarships, we have other support for people who aren't working in Jewish organizations. Again, Gratz is open to people of all religions, all faiths or non-faiths. And we are an international college. We have students currently in about 9 different countries in Asia, Africa, Europe, Latin America, and all over the United States. And we can do this because we are an online school. So at this point, I am delighted to turn the program back over to Naomi, who will give a more formal introduction to Liz. I just want to welcome her. I appreciate that just an hour ago, she literally zoomed in from California to be on this. And when we've done, she will zoom back to California where she's speaking from. Thank you, Liz, for joining us.
Great, thank you, Paul. So I'm going to try to make this quick and so that we can hear Liz, but I do want to do justice to her background. So just by way of introduction of Liz, just wanted to share that she did her undergraduate work at Temple University in Philadelphia, where she majored in environmental science and a minor in Spanish. She, as I mentioned before, she recently completed her master's at Gratz, and since then has been, since 2016, has been the program manager for Eco Urban Gardens, an LA-based nonprofit organization. The mission of Eco Urban Gardens is combating food insecurity through urban agriculture and regenerative living. The organization targets issues such as health, urban greening, and food security. Today, she manages several farm-to-table programs and maintains gardens with native and edible plants. She works with schools and kids and teachers, and she manages the Eco Urban Gardens Farm to School program advocating agroecology, which I would love to know what that means. So with that, Elizabeth, welcome, and thank you for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Naomi. I really appreciate it. And hello to everyone. I hope you're all doing well today. So thank you for that gorgeous introduction. So my name is Liz, and I'm the program manager for Eco Urban Gardens. And thank goodness I went through this program at Gratz, because I was in way over my head with this job. So I'm going to get into a little bit about the history of the organization, how we've sort of transitioned our programmatics into a virtual space as a result of the pandemic, and then all the tools that sort of directly led into this that I learned in my nonprofit business management program that helped me get through this really tough time. So our organization was started in 2015, December of 2015. We essentially were working with another organization, a farm in South LA, and we had a lot of requests from local schools who said, we really want your program, but we can't afford to bring our kids to the farm. So right away, we decided to start writing grants to see if we could find money to either start busing kids to the farm or to start bringing the program to them. And luckily, we got a grant right away from a local architecture firm. And that was our very first school was at Arroyo High School in El Monte. So since that first garden, we've expanded to 2 other schools in that district with a plan to expand to all 6 high schools in that district, as well as their middle schools. We also began working with homeschool students. So I work with charter schools and homeschools where I either go directly to the house of the student and work with them one-on-one, or we do like a group class where a couple kids can come to the farm and learn together for like a Saturday morning workshop. So that's all of our educational programmatics, and we also, so that's called the Farm to School program. And we also have something called Farm to Table, which is directly catered to homeowners and businesses. So the idea with Farm to Table is that if you wanted to start growing vegetables in your backyard or on your patio, you would have an eco-urban garden staff member come to your house or your business and do a consultation and either set that up for you or give you the tools to do it yourself. So with all of that, so our main 2 programs, Farm to School and Farm to Table, are combating food insecurity in LA. So let's talk a little bit about what food insecurity is. So some of you are probably familiar with this term because I started learning about it living in Philadelphia. It's certainly an issue that Philadelphia also faces. A food desert is essentially a neighborhood or an area that has little or no access to fresh organic produce, and not necessarily even organic, but just access to inexpensive fresh produce. That's fruits, vegetables, and herbs. So what causes a food desert is a lot of different factors, but it's particularly relevant right now with the BLM movement. It's racism is a very big part of it. So I can't speak for Philadelphia, but from LA, the neighborhoods where I'm working in are primarily immigrant families. They're mostly Latino, and most of my students are DACA or first generation. So right away, these families are already struggling. They probably have low paying jobs. Most 80 to 90% of my students are on a nutrition program that's either discounted or free. And you can look at a map, like if you look at a Google map and you type in supermarkets to a neighborhood, you'll see which neighborhoods have a Whole Foods and a Trader Joe's and an Acme, and can't remember the Philadelphia supermarket brands, but you get what I'm saying. And in the food desert areas, you will find maybe one supermarket within like a 5 to 10 mile radius. So that means if you don't have a car and you're relying on public transportation, it's difficult for you to feed your family. You can't walk to the grocery store. You can't ride your bike to the grocery store. You kind of need a car, which makes it very difficult. So a lot of families end up eating whatever's near them, which is like from a fast food restaurant or like a local corner store that probably maybe sells a couple fruits and vegetables, but nothing with any real nutrition. So how Eco-Urban Gardens works to fight this food desert issue that we're facing is by investing in the communities. So a recent study by the LA Parks Department showed that the community where we're working, it's called El Monte, it's about 20 minutes southeast of downtown Los Angeles, has 0.08 acres of park space per every 1,000 residents. Now I know that's a weird number to throw out, but for example, the community where I live in Pasadena has 8 acres per 1,000 residents. So the park space and the green space in the community is pretty much non-existent in El Monte. So how that factors into the health of the community is that the air quality is worse, The temperature is higher. There's something called the urban heat island effect, where when everyone is using their air conditioners and there's a lot of concrete and paved surfaces and nothing to absorb the heat, it makes the temperature in the whole community higher. So when we have a 105-degree day in Pasadena, it's a 115-degree day in El Monte. So because of the zoning laws and the immigration policies and the housing crisis and all these different political factors that created the food desert, what's resulted after decades and decades of this continuing is that the health effects are way worse in that community. So whereas in Pasadena, I'm able to walk to a grocery store, I can walk to a park, the temperature is cooler, I can go outside more often, the air quality is better, it encourages me to exercise and eat healthier. Whereas in El Monte, they don't have all of those different things available to them. So what ends up happening is certain diseases become very prevalent in those communities. So now, after many decades, we're seeing high rates of diabetes, especially type 2 diabetes in children, and obesity. So which also leads to a bunch of other chronic illnesses later in life, like cancer risk and heart disease and other chronic illnesses that a lot of my students will end up facing. So now that we've identified the public health crisis and what's causing it, the next step is, okay, how do we fix it? So how Eco-Urban Gardens decided to face this issue was by working with hospitals. So we're working with 2 major hospitals in South LA, City of Hope, which is a cancer research center, and Kaiser Permanente, which is focusing on reducing diabetes and also chronic illness, especially in children. So apart from the regular nutrition service that the students get in the school, we noticed there was very little to no education around food or how food affects your body and how food affects your brain. So apart from just students having to worry about getting cancer in their 60s, they're also worrying about, okay, am I getting enough nutrients that's feeding my brain so that I can do well on a test score and I can be in an AP class and I can have a good GPA and get into a college if I want to. So health affects everything. It affects your studies, it affects your family life, it affects long-term how you're living your life. It can even affect your job. If you have, if you're having health issues, you might not be able to work a full-time job. So the health issue affects more than just health. It's also affecting economics. It's affecting the future of these students' lives. I feel like I got a little off track here. So let's go back to Eco-Urban Gardens and what we're doing to combat food insecurity. So with our program, we go into a school, we pick a space to create a garden, we get all the funding together to start constructing the garden, and then we provide a teacher and a curriculum to help incorporate the students. So right now we're working just as an extracurricular. So students who are in the culinary arts program or engineering or woodshop can come during class time to the garden to learn about soil health and construction and engineering. And then we also have an after-school program that meets every day from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. And then we're also teaching workshops on Saturday mornings that are open to the community. So we're not just educating the students, we're also educating the parents and the families of the surrounding community. That's really key, because how many teenagers do you know that go to school and they're like, come home and they're like, I learned about vitamin C today? No, that's definitely not happening. So it has to be a whole family education. So we set up the farm. The students are involved in the whole process. They are involved in the design. So they're understanding about the engineering of landscapes and how water moves and how soil works. and how to excavate, create vegetated bioswales and other sort of organic regenerative agriculture techniques. They're also involved in the construction, so they learn how to build the raised beds. They design their own beds. They are given the tools to pretty much create the garden so that it becomes their own. That's really key, is that we want them to take ownership. So this was all pre-COVID, obviously. So we have all these different elements that we were working with prior to the pandemic. And once the pandemic hit, we realized, oh no, we went from having like 150 people a day in the garden with us to no people any days, just me. We went from 150 people a day in the garden to just me. So as you can imagine, our food production went way down. We definitely struggled for the first couple months. March and April were pretty rough, but we turned it around fairly quickly. So I realized pretty much by the end of March that we had two options. We were either going to transition into a virtual space, or our program was going to sink. So right away, we started making YouTube videos. We started a YouTube channel. We started filming in the garden every single day. I started communicating with my students through Facebook Messenger and Instagram and email and all these different social media platforms. And it's sort of keeping it going. So we haven't been allowed to start bringing students back onto campus yet, but we have been allowed to bring a few adult volunteers, which has helped a bit. So now we're producing regular food, which is going to the nutrition services, where everything that's grown in the garden is being distributed to the community for free by the school district. And we're still directly participating with students virtually. So they're still in touch with the garden. They can see the progress. That was probably my biggest fear, was that the students would lose touch with the garden and sort of forget about it, or they wouldn't feel like it was their garden anymore, but it really is their garden because they built it. We just provided the money and the tools. So I know from watching other nonprofits that this would not have been possible for eco-urban gardens if I had not taken a variety of different classes through the nonprofit business management, particularly learning how to do social media marketing, how to collaborate with other NGOs and how important it is to get those collaborations, and also just in general, the communication skills. I'm sure you are all feeling right now that, you had to learn Zoom, you had to learn Google Meet. It was a sort of a learning curve for everyone. And it's difficult and a little sad to see how some nonprofits are really struggling to get it to transition into that virtual space, and they're definitely going to be hit harder. So, and we kind of didn't have a choice. A lot of our grant funding that we had received prior to the pandemic, we're still expected to fulfill the terms of those grants. Obviously, they're going to give a little leniency because of what's going on, but they still want us to have outcome. So if it hadn't have been for the classes that I had taken through this nonprofit business management, I wouldn't have been prepared, and we might have lost the funding, which would have been terrible. So where we are now, I feel pretty solid. We've got a couple really good partnerships. We're producing regular virtual content. We're working on a film right now, actually. It's in post-production. We're also working on an animation, an educational animation, sort of similar to the Magic School Bus, if anyone remembers that. And I feel very relieved. I feel positive about the future. I feel Eco-Urban Gardens is definitely going to survive the pandemic. We're going to come out the other side with new partnerships and up to the next level. So thank you, Paul, and to all of my teachers at Gratz. That was really night or day for us. So now I was wondering if anyone had any questions about our programs or about what we do. I'd be happy to answer them now.
Great, Liz, thank you. That was so inspiring. And just, I'm amazed at how much you jammed into that 15 minutes. It was very great. That was really, really wonderful. I'm looking at the chat if anybody has any questions. Yes, here is a question. Did studying online give you extra preparation for what's going on today?
Oh yes, definitely. I'm not a very techie person. I did grow up using computers because my dad was a computer programmer, but I was not into social media. I had no idea how to use Instagram or any of these different platforms. So that was a learning curve in itself. But once I started to do it, I was like, okay, this isn't that hard. And that class sort of prepared me so that in March, when the pandemic hit, I was like, okay, the light bulb went off, and it was a lot easier to learn all these new platforms. I didn't get overwhelmed. I was like, all right, I can learn this. I did it before, I can do it now. So yes.
A question that I have is about how do you measure your outcomes? How do you know that you're having an impact?
Yes, that's a very good question. It's something we're still working on right now. So literally 30 minutes before this Zoom, I had a Zoom with the school district where we were talking about how to do a club virtually. So it looks like we're gonna try and have Zoom sessions in the garden, and then I'm gonna try and have regular virtual classes with my students where they can start answering questions to sort of assess how much they're getting out of the program. And obviously they can't have the hands-on element, which was a really important part, but they can do certain things from home. So what I intend to do is we'll start up in September is to have sort of weekly Zoom check-ins with all the garden club students, and we'll kind of use surveys and kind of open-faced discussions to sort of get an understanding of how much the students are still taking away from this program, even if they can't physically be there.
So I have a question about how do you replicate this work? How do you expand it?
Okay, yeah, I think, well, we sort of shrank a bit with the pandemic. Unfortunately, I had to furlough most of my staff. So at the moment, we're not going to expand very much. But before the pandemic, we had quite a good momentum. Once the first program was pretty solid at Arroyo High School, we started going to board meetings for the school district and talking about our program at Arroyo High School. And then all the other principals of all the other schools, I don't know if they got jealous or what happened, but they all started calling me being like, oh, well, we need this program. We need this program. We also started reaching out to local charter schools, basically making ourselves a vendor to homeschool families. So once we sort of posted ourselves as a possible homeschool teacher, then we just started getting phone calls and emails from parents asking for hands-on garden education. And in terms of like how we expanded in the farm to table, that was pretty much word of mouth. We haven't spent any money on marketing at all. The only thing we've spent money on is brochures and business cards. Everything else has been social media marketing and word of mouth.
Wonderful. So I have a question that's connected to the Jewishness of Gratz College. And the question is about whether you have any meaningful connection with Israel, given the fact not that just that it's a Jewish country, but that they know how to grow food in hot climates like LA. Is that a place that has helped inform your work in any way?
Yeah, I've been paying attention closely to what Israel's doing agriculturally. I know they've started doing a lot of the saltwater conversion plants. I don't know if that's the most sustainable solution, but I think my interest in gardening sort of was sprung from gardening with my grandfather growing up, and then also going to Machane Galil. There was a lot of outdoor and gardening that happened there. So I think it was sort of Judaism that was the trigger in my life that sort of started this whole process. So out in LA, the majority of the Jewish population is on the west side of Los Angeles, and we're working primarily on the east side of Los Angeles. So it's about an hour and a half away from each other. And being in the Latino community, it's mostly Catholic people that we're working with. So I haven't directly involved any synagogues into our programming, but just watching Israel and my experience growing up in Jewish culture was sort of the catalyst that got me onto the path.
That's fascinating. Thank you. So I'm looking at the time, and this is painful to do, but I think we are going to have to wrap it so we can keep our promise. I think we could talk all night. This is really, really fascinating stuff. So thank you, and thank you all for submitting your questions. I just want to say that, this is, like you said, we're all sort of learning how to communicate together and stay connected. And these are the kind of things like what we're doing right now, learning together as a community, which is so important because it helps us grow and stay connected. And that's what GRATS is all about. So thank you for being part of that. I see a question here about whether we're recording these, and we are recording every evening's webinar. So as soon as they're edited and ready to go, we'll be sharing them with everybody. So I know lots of people register for this. Not everybody actually signed on tonight, as is usually the case. There's dinner and kids and all kinds of stuff that pulls us away. So we'll make sure those recordings are available. And what else do I need to tell you? I guess just aside from thanks to everybody, I invite you again all to participate in the giving campaign and I do have one thing to do here. Let me share my screen. I promised Liz I would show everybody. Let me pull it up real quick. Here it is. Okay, so here is how to get in touch with Liz, how to stay connected with Eco Urban Gardens. You can follow her and the organization on YouTube, on Instagram. Liz, hopefully I got that handle correct. I got it? Okay, thumbs up. You can follow her on Facebook, and I have watched some of her videos on YouTube, and they're absolutely wonderful. There was one about how nature sort of inhibits the stress hormones and all that stuff. So I still remember that. It was excellent. Thank you for that. And you can, of course, reach out to Liz by email. With that, I hope you will reach out and stay connected to her organization and to GRATS. And again, thank you all for being part of this wonderful evening. And I hope you'll, if you're interested, join us tomorrow night. Our final webinar is all about learning in the remote world and how we can support young people as parents, as teachers. We have Craig Vandermark, who's an alumnus, and also one of our adjunct instructors who is and also he's an elementary school teacher, and he's wonderful. If you know Craig, he's a treat to listen to, and he's going to provide some wonderful strategies to help kids connect their left and right brain while they're sitting in front of a computer all day long, starting this fall. So again, thank you. And Liz, good luck with all the great work you're doing. Your passion is truly inspiring.
Thank you so much, Naomi. It was a pleasure.
All right. Good night, everybody.